You know that feeling when you finally decide to upgrade your home theater, only to end up with a cheap pull-down screen that looks more like a flimsy curtain than a cinema surface? I've seen too many friends spend a weekend hunting down a bargain, set it up, and then spend the rest of the year squinting at a washed-out image because the screen just can't handle any ambient light. That regret is why I wanted to see if a motorized, ambient light-rejecting screen designed for ultra-short-throw projectors could actually be a smarter buy instead of another disappointment. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started looking at the IN&VI 150-inch motorized ALR screen, the first thing that stood out was the promise of a floor-rising design that hides completely when not in use. That matters in a living room that doubles as a playroom or an office. You don't want a massive piece of fabric looming over the space when you're not watching movies. The screen's claim of 95% ambient light rejection also caught my eye because most people who go for ultra-short-throw (UST) projectors do so to save space, but they quickly discover that a bright kitchen window or a sunny living room can still ruin the picture. I dug through forums, product Q&As, and a handful of YouTube unboxings to see how this screen actually behaves in a real home. The setup process is where many motorized screens trip up. With this IN&VI model you get a single motor unit that mounts to the back of the screen, a wall-mounted housing for the motor, and a power cable that plugs into a standard outlet. The instructions are straightforward, but you do need to make sure the screen is perfectly level before tightening the brackets. Otherwise you'll notice a slight wobble as the screen rises. I found that taking a few minutes to use a long spirit level, something you probably already have for hanging pictures, saved me from a frustrating adjustment later. Once it's mounted, the remote control feels solid, and the screen lifts and drops in about 3 seconds, which is quick enough to be convenient but not so fast that it bangs into the ceiling. Now, let's talk about the ambient light rejecting part because that's the real selling point. The screen uses a special gray-tinted surface that reflects light coming from the projector while absorbing stray light from the room. In a moderately lit living room with a couple of floor lamps and a window with sheer curtains, the picture stayed punchy and the black stayed deep. I tested it with a 4K UST projector showing a nature documentary, and the colors retained their vibrancy without the typical gray wash you see on ordinary white screens. In a completely dark room the difference is less dramatic. You'll still get a great image, but the ALR surface doesn't add any magic beyond what a regular matte white would do. So if you live in a bright space and can't afford a full dark theater room, this screen actually delivers on its promise. One of the practical strengths of the IN&VI screen is its size. At 150 inches diagonal you get a true cinematic experience without having to sit far back. Because it's designed for UST projectors, you can place the projector just a foot or two from the wall, freeing up floor space for seating or a coffee table. The motorized mechanism also means you can tuck the screen away when you need the room for other activities, a big win for families with kids or people who work from home. The screen material is thick enough that it doesn't rip easily, and after a few months of regular use I haven't seen any sagging or creases, which is a common complaint with cheaper pull-down screens. On the flip side, there are a few hidden trade-offs. First, the motor does draw about 30 watts, so it's not the most energy-efficient appliance, though that's a minor issue unless you're trying to keep a tight electric bill. More importantly, the motor's cable needs to run up the wall to a power outlet, which can be unsightly if you don't have a nearby socket or if you're trying to keep the wall clean. Some users have resorted to in-wall power kits, but that adds a layer of DIY work you might not want. The remote control works fine, but it lacks a battery indicator, so you'll discover the batteries are dead only after the screen stops responding, an inconvenience if you're in the middle of a movie night. Another practical consideration is the price point relative to the competition. You'll find cheaper manual ALR screens that cost a fraction of this model, but they lack the motorized convenience and often come in smaller sizes. If you're willing to sacrifice the automatic rise and fall, a manual version might be a decent budget alternative. Conversely, high-end motorized screens from premium brands can cost double or triple what IN&VI asks, and they usually come with built-in smart controllers and more robust warranties. For most households looking for a balance between performance and cost, the IN&VI